Hey, good morning, everyone. Happy Thursday morning to you, and welcome back to Morning Musings. My name is Don K. Preston. I am the president of Preterist Research Institute of Ardmore, Oklahoma. I do appreciate you being with me. And by the way, don't forget the March 2020 U.S. orders only 3-book special, Like Father, Like Son on Clouds of Glory. How's this possible? The elements shall melt with fervent heat. You'll love these books. They may well change your worldview, but it will give you a glorious worldview of confidence and assurance that God kept His word. We don't have to give excuses. We don't have to try to, argue away over 200 Bible verses as to why the Lord didn't come in the first century. We don't have to become unbelievers. We can accept God at His word. So, these books would be a blessing in your life. Go to my website, donkpreston.com, bibleprophecy.com. There's a tab right up at the top that'll march you right through it. Now, if you're overseas or if you're out of the U.S. and you would like to purchase PDF copies of these books at a greatly reduced price, far less than $40, then contact me on how to do that. All right. Well, pardon me. We spent about 6 or 7 videos showing the correlation and relationship between Matthew chapter 24, verse 31, and Isaiah chapter 27. I was demonstrating to you that sending forth of the angels with the great sound of a trumpet is the time of the harvest. I mean, what else is it? Whereas, look, I was raised believing that the sound of the great trumpet was the end of time. And in my real young years, honest to goodness, I'm not kidding you, there were times in which I would unexpectedly hear a train horn that was close, and it just scared the bejeebers out of me. This is it! Until I came to realize that's not at all what the Bible's talking about. Well, I shared with you yesterday that Isaiah 27 and all of the New Testament passages that deal with the sounding of the trumpet, they are dealing with the harvest at the end of the Old Covenant age. They're not talking about the sound of the trumpet at the end of the Christian age. The Christian age has no end. They're not talking about the sounding of the great trumpet at the end of time. The Bible does not address the end of time. In Matthew chapter 13, and boy, this is absolutely fascinating to me. It's fascinating to me the number of postmillennialists and even a few amillennialists who are willing to admit that Matthew chapter 13 is talking about the harvest that occurred at the end of the Old Covenant age in AD 70. Joel McDermott, in his book, Jesus v. Jerusalem, really good book, by the way, said that Matthew chapter 13 is about the harvest that took place in AD 70, and we should not look for an application of the parable beyond that. Well, amen to that. But guess what? If Matthew 13 is talking about the coming of the Lord with His angels at the end of the age, then there's not another end of the age in which Jesus comes with His angels and the sounding of the trumpet. There's just not. There's only one coming of the Lord with His angels, sound of a trumpet at the end of the age. So I want you to notice Matthew chapter 13. I feel a sneeze coming on. It's just absolutely horrible. Matthew 13, 36 and following. Then Jesus sent the multitude away, and He went into the house, and His disciples came to Him and said, "Explain to us the parable of the tares of the field." He answered and said to them, "The one who sows the good seed is the Son of Man. The field is the world, the good seeds are the sons of the kingdom, but the tares are the sons of the wicked one. The enemy who sowed them is the devil. The harvest is the end of the age. The reapers are the angels. Therefore, as the tares are gathered and burned in the fire, so it will be at the end of this age. the Son of Man will send out his angels. They will gather out of his kingdom all things that offend, those who practice lawlessness, and will cast them into the furnace of fire. There will be wailing and gnashing of teeth. Then when? The coming of the Son of Man with his angels at the time of the harvest. Then the righteous will shine forth as the sun in the kingdom of their Father. Let the one who has ears to hear, let him hear. Okay, so the coming of the Son of Man with his angels for the gathering of the elect, the harvest, would be at the end of the age. Now, the New King James, the King James, and a few other translations render it as the end of this age. There's not just a whole lot of great manuscript attestation for this, but some translations do have it, and I believe that's exactly the correct idea. What age was Jesus living in? He wasn't living in the Christian age that has no end, as I've already proven. He was living in the age in which Moses had commanded the levirate marriage, according to Luke chapter 20. That means it was the Mosaic age. He was living in the age that the temple at Jerusalem represented. Remember, Jesus predicted the destruction of the temple and that entire complex, and the disciples responded by saying, when shall these things be? What shall be the sign of your parousia and the end of the age? By the way, the end of the age they're asking about in Matthew 24 and verse 3 is the identical Greek term that Jesus uses in Matthew 13:39. Identical Greek term that's only used about 7 times in the New Testament, by the way. Jesus is predicting the gathering at the end of the age. The disciples are asking about the end of the age. And Jesus tells them about the gathering at his coming at the end of the age. Now, watch this. For time consideration, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this. But I just want to emphasize it's not talking about the end of time. It is not talking about the end of the Christian age. It is talking about the end of the age in which Jesus was living when he spoke these words. Look, even those who believe that the law passed away at the cross don't believe that the law had already passed when Jesus spoke these words and that therefore Jesus was living in the Christian age. They don't believe that. They understand that Jesus was still living. And by the way, this is at virtually the beginning of his ministry. It's very early on. They understand that Jesus was living fully in the Old Covenant age. They know he was living in the age of Moses and the law. And he says, harvest is at the end of this age. He did not say harvest is at the end of the age to come. Didn't say it. Did not imply it. Did not infer it. And he drives it home in verse 43. Then when? The end of the age. The time of the gathering. The sending forth of the angels for the gathering. Then the righteous will shine forth as the sun. Now, once again, we have a verse that many, if not most, and I would say most, commentators who take note of these things agree and admit that Matthew 13:43 is a direct echo, a direct citation of Daniel chapter 12, verse 3. Well, wait a minute. Daniel chapter 12 foretold the time of the Great Tribulation, verse 1, which Jesus applied to his generation, Matthew 24, 15 through 22. It foretold the resurrection. Oh, wait a minute. Isaiah 27 foretold the time of the resurrection, as we have seen. And Jesus said that Isaiah 27:13, which is the resurrection, was to be fulfilled in his generation. Matthew 24, verse 34. So we have Daniel chapter 12 being applied by Jesus to his generation. How do we avoid that? How do we escape that? How do we mitigate that and just wave our hand and get rid of it? Well, if we're going to be good, solid, honest Bible exegetes, we don't dismiss it. We don't deny it. We admit to it, and we accept it. Now, Daniel chapter 12 verse 3 talks about the time of the end, when the righteous would shine as the stars and as the sun in the kingdom. Well, in Daniel chapter 12 and verse 6, one angel asked another, when shall these things be fulfilled? When shall all of these things be? And the other angel lifts his right hand to heaven, lifts his left hand to heaven, and swears by him who lives forever and forever, and says, it shall be for a time and a time and a half time, times and a half time. And when the power of the holy people has been completely shattered, all, not some. You know, Mr. Sam Frost says Daniel chapter 12 verse 1 was fulfilled in the time of Antiochus Epiphanes. But he says verse 2 is at the end of time. Well, that means that in Daniel chapter 12 and verse 7, it's not all of these things will be fulfilled. It's some of these things will be fulfilled. You see, Mr. Frost has to pervert the text in order to get his doctrine out of it. Oh, and by the way, Daniel chapter 12 verse 3 and verse 4 is talking about the time of the end. Jesus said the time of the end foretold by Daniel, which would occur at the time of the Great Tribulation, would occur in his generation. This gospel must be preached in all the world as a witness to the nations, then comes the end. Well, when would that be? Matthew 24 verse 34. This generation will by no means pass away until all of these things are fulfilled. All, not some, not a few, not even most, all. So when would the righteous shine in the kingdom as foretold by Jesus in Matthew 13? Oh, it would be at the end of the age. When would it be? Daniel chapter 12 says it would be at the end of the age. When did Daniel say that would be? He said it would be when the power of the holy people was completely shattered. And Jesus said, the righteous shining forth in the kingdom, the harvest, the end of the old covenant age, not the harvest of the new covenant age, but the harvest of the old covenant age would be when Daniel 12 verse 3 was fulfilled. And that was when the power of the holy people was completely shattered. Listen, folks, the power of the holy people was not Israel's army. The power of the holy people was not even the city of Jerusalem. The power of the holy people was not even the temple. The power of the holy people was not even the priesthood. The only thing that gave Israel's armies, the only thing that gave the city, the temple, the altar, the priest, the sacrifice, the only thing that gave them any power whatsoever was the covenant. Their covenant with Old Covenant Israel. And thus Matthew 13 and Daniel 12 give us powerful, definitive proof that the coming of the Son of Man on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory, the sending forth of his angels to gather the elect, is not a yet future event. It occurred at the end of the old covenant age of Israel that happened in AD 70. Hey, thanks again for joining me. Thank you so much for being with me this week. Don't forget the 3-book special, okay? BibleProphecy.com, DonKPreston.com. Please take advantage of that. Tomorrow we'll continue our examination, our refutation of Mr. Lance Conley's book, Hope Resurrected, and his doctrine of the election. Okay? Don't want to miss it. I'll see you on the flip side.